Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Ahmed.
And I'm Rutledge, and we're both staff attorneys at Legal Aid in Northwest Texas.
Today we're going to talk about the top 5 things we believe all tenants should know. We'll be talking about several laws and protections during this presentation, and we'll provide details on how to access this information at the end of this video. The first topic is the CDC eviction moratorium. Some of you may be familiar with it, but for those who are not, the CDC eviction moratorium protects people who have not been able to pay their rent during the pandemic because of financial hardship. This moratorium allows tenants who are being evicted for non-payment of rent to remain in their homes. Right now, the protection is in place until March 31st, but it could be extended. The protections offered by the CDC eviction moratorium apply to those who meet certain conditions. The conditions can be found on the CDC declaration. If all the conditions apply to you, then you can truthfully sign the declaration under penalty of perjury, then deliver a copy to your landlord, and also file a copy with the court if an eviction has been filed against you. If you have an eviction filed against you and you have a hearing date coming up, then you do need to go to the hearing where the judge will make a decision on whether your case can be delayed until after March 31st. This gives you time to come to an agreement with your landlord or find rental assistance to help you pay for rent. It's very important to know that even if the judge says that you can stay in your home without paying rent, any rent that you owe will still be due to your landlord whenever the eviction moratorium ends. So it's important that you try to make every effort to make payment of rent.
Speaking of rent, Sarah, that's number 2 on our list. In Texas, there are several different rent relief programs that are being provided to qualifying tenants. One of those is the Texas Eviction Rental Assistance Program, also known as TRAP. TRAP is being given federal funds to different agencies at the local city, county, and the state level. And these funds are available to residents who are behind on their rent or utilities. Now, each different agency has different requirements on how to apply for these funds, and we suggest that you contact them directly. If you want to apply for funds via the state, you need to go to the Texas Rent Relief website at texasrentrelief.com. Another rent relief program is the Texas Eviction Diversion Program, known as the TEDP. Now, this program only applies to situations where an eviction has already been filed. It requires both the tenant and the landlord to agree to participate in the program. If they both agree to participate in the program, then the eviction can be dismissed and the landlord can receive back rent amount owed. To qualify for the program, what you need to do is you need to let your judge know that you and the landlord both want to enter into the program, and the court will provide you information on where you need to go to apply for assistance. Throughout Texas, there are other agencies that are offering assistance, but generally they're only available to people who live in or near that agency's location. In all these cases, there are eligibility requirements and limited funds, which means you should apply to determine if you qualify, and you should do so quickly because those federal funds could run out.
Thanks, Kalisha. And speaking of federal, the third item we want to talk about is a federal court ruling in a case called Turkle v. CDC. The judge in that court case said that the CDC order is unconstitutional. Please note that although the federal court is located in Texas, that ruling applies only to people involved in that lawsuit and no one else. Additionally, other courts have ruled that the CDC moratorium is lawful. Plus, the U.S. Department of Justice is actually appealing the ruling in the Turkle matter. The most important thing for people to know is that the Texas Supreme Court's previously issued emergency order number 34 states that CDC eviction moratorium is valid and remains in effect until March 31st, 2021, as I mentioned earlier, unless Congress extends it.
And Sarah, I want to shift gears for number 4 on our list. And it's not related to the pandemic, but it is something that I think all tenants need to know, and that is the landlord's responsibility to make repairs. To trigger the landlord's duty to make repairs, the tenant must be current on rent. The tenant will then need to send a repair request in writing to their landlord via certified mail, return receipt requested, or another method that they can track the mail. Once the landlord receives it, he has a reasonable time to make repairs. And a reasonable time is 7 to 10 days, unless the repair is an emergency and that time period might go down. If the landlord refuses to make repairs after the reasonable time period, you can sue them in court to either force them to make the repairs, get a reduction in your rent, or to terminate your lease agreement. It's really important that, and I want to stress this, that you should never withhold your rent because your landlord is failing to make repairs. Always pay your rent and do not deduct your rent or deduct any repairs that you have done from your rent, because you will put yourself in a situation where you might possibly face an eviction for non-payment of rent. So always pay your rent to your landlord.
That's really good information, Kalisha, but what about a situation where something like the winter storms, where you have power outages or people with burst pipes, collapsed ceilings, or no water? What do you do in those cases?
That's a good question, Sarah. So I would tell people that they need to check their renter's insurance policy. Many policies cover the loss of your personal belongings, or they might pay for a hotel stay if your home is being repaired. Keep in mind, though, that landlords do not have to start making those repairs to your unit until they receive money from the insurance proceeds. Next, I would tell people that they should check the FEMA's website. And FEMA stands for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA is the agency that handles disaster funds. Many Texas counties have been declared disaster areas after the recent storms, making businesses and residents eligible to apply for help. One way to apply for that help is to go to FEMA's website at disasterassistance.gov, or by calling FEMA at 800-621-3362. Now, if your unit is partially or totally uninhabitable, there are certain things that you can do. If your resident is only partially uninhabitable and the damage is not due to the tenant's neglect, the tenant can get a reduction in rent by a court order. Now, if that residence is totally uninhabitable and the damage is not due to the tenant's neglect, the tenant can terminate their lease in writing at any time before repairs are completed. The tenant would then be able to get a refund of any rent paid in advance, as well as their security deposit back. But we would also suggest that you contact your local legal aid so that they can walk you through the process on how to do that.
Absolutely. And so our first thing that we talked about was the CDC eviction moratorium. The second topic we discussed was rental assistance. The third was the Turkle v. CDC matter. And then the fourth was the remedy and repair that you just discussed, Kalisha. The fifth thing I want to talk about is documentation. Now, whether you're requesting repairs or having conversations with your landlord, you need to document everything. Make sure all of your efforts to work with your landlord are documented. So any agreement you have should be in writing. If you pay rent in cash, which we do not recommend, be sure to get a receipt for these payments. Likewise, if you pay for any repairs yourself, get a receipt for that as well. If you have verbal conversations with your landlord, you might be wondering, how can I document that? It's simple. You can actually send an email to your landlord recapping the conversation. If there's damage to your home or you need something repaired, take a picture or a video of it. And the best thing to do to make sure that you maintain those documents and those pictures and videos is to email them to yourself. That way, if you lose access to your phone, you can later have that documentation in your email if you need to provide proof.
Well, that wraps up our top 5 lists of things that we think every tenant should know.
And we hope that you found this information helpful.
To get the resources that we talked about in our presentation, you can go to the following websites for pandemic and disaster related documents, for eviction moratorium, for winter storm disaster assistance, and the Texas Rent Relief website. Like we said earlier, we suggest that you contact your local legal aid agency for information. If you would like to apply for legal aid in Northwest Texas, here's the different ways that you can apply. If you're still dealing with a winter storm and have questions, we suggest that you call our disaster line at 855-548-8457. For all other issues, you can make an application by going to our website at www.landlord.org and clicking Get Help, or you can call our legal aid line at 888-529-5277.
Thanks, Kalisha.
No problem.